All right, so let's talk about game mastering. I didn't have a whole lot of experience in game mastering before I started doing the Fallout game. It took me a while to learn some of the pitfalls that you can fall into of building either too much story, what kind of story should you be building, like what kind of framework, what's your GM style. I think you get all of that by just trying. So if it's your first time and you're like, hey, I want to run Fallout 2d20, pick something simple. Like my first session or two was just like introduce the group. There's one NPC that they interact with. There's one fight where they fight essentially mole rats. Everybody gets a little bit of combat. Everybody gets a little bit of the social cues. Everybody kind of like makes some decisions together and then rolls out. What's your kind of advice for a first time?
Think of it like a tutorial or a beginner box. So I believe Pathfinder 2nd edition, Pathfinder and Starfinder, the Paizo products, have these beginner boxes, and they have these adventures in the beginner's box, and they're based around mechanics. So the first adventure you do teaches you about skill checks. The second encounter you do is a combat, and maybe this one is like a puzzle. So or any type of video game now where the very beginning is a tutorial and you just don't know it yet. Like, hey there, you just woke up from cryosleep. Can you take a look around? All right, now let's make sure you're able to walk. Let's check those actuators out. Give us a big jump. Here's a weapon. Shoot down this range. So it's kind of teaching you the controls and stuff, and then doing little combats and stuff like that so you can learn mechanics and stuff. So if you have a brand new cadre of players, it's a great way to introduce them. When you have experienced players, then you can look at the world building and stuff. Like, this is where you are. Learn the world. You have a handle on the mechanics. Now learn the world. And that's why I like games like Tales from the Loop, Things from the Flood, because I can use a setting that people know about. So the 1980s in this city right here where everybody grew up. So now that you've taken that barrier out of trying to learn the setting, the only barrier left is trying to learn the mechanics. So, like you said, for the beginning of this game, eventually we are going to go to All Islands, but we are at some nondescript base.
Right.
And we're meeting each other, and we're doing some basic things, and we're doing a basic combat. So we're learning some mechanics right now. And once we get more comfortable with the mechanics, even though we're kind of being railroaded towards Olden Islands, that's fine because we're learning mechanics as we go. And then once we go to Olden Islands, this is an opportunity for us to learn the setting. And then we kind of build on that, build on that, build on that. So as far as world building goes, that's good to try to introduce your players.
And I think it's always good to do to like, if you don't want the like quintessential tavern setting for too long, and so introducing some sort of like, hey, something is happening. Like I like the beginning of KOTOR 1. It's like you make your character and it's like, wake up, man, the ship is under attack. Like, you got to get out of here. My name is this, and we're just gonna go. We got to go right now. Like, we gotta go do this thing. Like, to me, like for an experienced player, or like that's a fun set to get into, because you already, like, if you are experienced, you know your character, you know what's happening. You can just like, okay, cool, I can roll with these punches. I think with the beginners, it's like easy to kind of have like a little ease in, but oftentimes like a pitfall that I've made in the past is like that running too long. And so it's like, understand that's like, okay, have a scene break, like have like you feel rumbling underneath you because it's, 20 buffalo are coming stampeding through your saloon. I don't know why we're in the Old West now, but that's just where we are. But like creating some sort of like a blockade or some sort of like problem for everybody to do outside of like a, hey, what's up, man? Welcome to the reunion. How you doing? Great to see you.
You meet at a bar, or you meet at the saloon, is the precursor to a session 0. So now games will do a session 0 where we can talk about how do these people know each other, and we can establish that fiction. Some games have it built into their system. Fate, for example, there are questions like look to the person you're right, establish a relationship with them. There are, if you go on itch.io or probably Drive Through RPG, there are probably supplements that establish how do these characters know each other as part of
Right.
a background generator. So it's part of character creation now in a lot of games. So, we had an idea of who our characters were, but Rising Sun Settlement was essentially we meet at the bar
Right.
and we have a common task. This could have easily been we had been in prison for 20 years and there's a prison break, and how have we've established our relationships with each other over the past 20 years or something like that could have been a hook there. And that's just how we know each other, we know how we know each other, we have pre-existing relationships. And just like somebody reading a book or listening to a novel or an audiobook or something like that, the reader, the viewer, the listener is now learning about some of these relationships, and we respect their intelligence by not being so ham-handed with it. Like, oh, I can tell that these two characters are friends without them saying, "We're friends," like that type of deal. But yeah,
Yeah.
the session 0, consider that, because that is going to help you um, get everybody on board. Everyone have like the same picture, an idea.
And if you are like playing like Fallout TTRPG or Fallout the role playing game, you can like an easy way to like learn the world is like you can just play the games. Like it is directly inspired by Fallout 4. Um, like learning that world, I think is pretty simple to understand. I spend most of my time I was like, okay, I have like points and quests for these people to go on. So we had the initial like Rising Sun settlement and then All Nolans. And then in All Nolans I said, okay, there's like 6 different places that these people can go. But I'm not going to have them go to all 6 like they're filling off a checklist. I'm going to make them choose where they go to, and then by what they choose, they get to experience certain parts of the world build that I've done. So from my perspective, like it's more important to build a world, and like Fallout's always had factions. Like there's a whole super mutant faction in All Nolans. The party really doesn't. The party talks to a janitor and a guy that's at Rising Sun Settlement that works the radio. They rarely talk to any of the super mutant factions because outside of the game, I sent out a survey that was like, "Hey, what of these interests you?" And I can build that into the story. And then I took the most popular ones and said, "Okay, this is kind of like the layout for where the party's going to go." So
Yeah,
I think also like knowing your players and what they are interested in is important when you're building your story. But having those things in the background from your world build helps inform you later down the line.
and you can always mix and match if you have an idea of what you would like for the party to encounter, and you also get an idea of what the party is interested in doing. So, we go see Ella Fitzgibbons, and maybe on the way we're attacked by 2 super mutants, or maybe we wanted to go see, go to the Sweet Chariot, and we're attacked by 2 super mutants on the way, or maybe we wanted to go to the Superdome to talk to the super mutants, and there was a misunderstanding, and we had to fight 2 super mutants along the way. Like you could have picked any of those, and you could fashion like what's the end result here? What faction resonates with people the most? What are people interested in? And you can still have them sort of host that. There's a lot of memes that go around like, this NPC, this throwaway NPC I made is now like this beloved character that all my players like, and will love and protect them and die for them if they need to. And it's truth. You really don't know what your players are going to like. Tabletop RPGs are a collaborative storytelling process. So you can create some ideas and they won't survive contact with the players, but you can still use some of that stuff a little bit later. You can roll with those punches. You know what type of encounters you want to do. You know what type of puzzles. And does it matter if it's Ella Fitzgibbons or the leader of the Pigskins, or as long as the motivations can be changed a little bit, does it matter who's giving the task or what type of task it is? You can kind of roll with those punches.
And that's kind of like from like the perspective of our party when we came. Ella Fitzgibbons was the quest giver that had a previous like beef with the Brotherhood of Steel, and that set off Lonnie, so that when he met another quest giver, Marty Buffont, he was like, okay, at first he was like, okay, yeah, I'm more in line with this because they are more aligned with me, so I trust their word a little bit better than another quest giver, which is like have those options there of like, hey, here's people telling you to do essentially the same thing, but with little tweaks and differences there. So you don't get like put into the thing of like, hey, it's your commander here. Go and, fetch me 3 rabbits and come back to me at the dawn, like having those kind of like fetch quests, like giving a little bit of agency over who you like the group aligns with, and what they want.
Yeah, and the Ella Fitzgibbons things was pretty interesting because nobody except Lonnie had any type of relationship with the city, and she was pretty neutral to everybody but Lonnie, and just the stuff that she was doing. It was just this big paradigm shift, and Lonnie just automatically like, I don't like her.
Right.
And it's not because she's bossed me around or done anything like inherently bad, but I don't like her. Just I really don't want to help her.
Right. And so like you can make a character like Signal, who is like supposed to be like the beloved big guy that wants to hug, and also like he's like the lovable barbarian like character. It's kind of in a lot of different media and stuff. But then like when your quest givers are more like have some stakes, like Signal's stakes are like he loves Mirelurks, and well, he technically loves Ella Fitzgibbons because that's his girlfriend. But like when you have quest givers that have some stakes, you just be prepared for your party to be like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. And so like have some backups in mind, have some ideas of like, okay, what are some nuggets for them to like have? So like Clark really doesn't care about anything outside of money, like as his initial character. And so it's like, okay, how do I motivate him to help the city and do a settlement? It's like, okay, well, I got to have a money factor in there. I've got to be able to promise some sort of wealth. I think Lonnie, Hazel, and Pep are all 3 people in my setting that are pretty motivated by just like intrinsic value of like helping other people and like generating like some sort of respect with other people. Whereas Clark is more like classic mercenary. I'm only here for the money. I'm only here for, I'm here for a good time, not for a long time. And so it's like you got to be able to have a few different strands to pull people. So I always say that from my experience, that the world building is important. And I think that if you're going to spend time like doing a lot of writing and a lot of like detailing, have the world build, understand that you're not going to use the world build all the time. And really like your scenarios and stories should be directed by your players rather than yourself of what you want to see. I think that that's fine to have beginnings and endings that are in your realm, but like the steps to get there, like of how you get into vault. Like I had the beginning scenario of they got to walk in the city and be escorted in by people to talk to the quest giver and get their new weapons. And at the end, they had to go to Vault 18. Everything in between there, I was like, okay, here's some different ideas that I have in mind, field out to the group, see what direction they want to go, and then use those tools as ways to get into the final area.
So that's the Free League games kind of do that for Tales from the Loop, Things from the Flood, where you have a mystery and you have the introduction to the mystery and you have the facts about the mystery, like what's actually happening and the motivation of the person or the group, whatever. And you might throw in a few details about how people are supposed to find out that information. And that's it. You've got a 1-page adventure or outline, and that's probably good enough for a 3 to 4 hour play session. Because again, a good tabletop RPG is a collaborative storytelling process. So it is collaborative world building as a result. Otherwise, you are just reading your fan fiction to 4 people. So,
Right.
there does have to be some collaboration. Now, it sounds like Dave, in this particular case, he introduced Ella Fitzgibbons. He knew her motivations. He knew what he wanted the end result to be, and everything in the middle, this party just kind of made happen. And the GM, in this case, Dave, knowing that like these are the pieces that need to fall into place, these are the motivations and stuff, he can kind of shift those around as necessary. So you do need to have an idea of where you want your story to go, at least the broad strokes. But a lot of those details are likely going to be filled in by your players. And you can try to railroad them, but um, it's a different experience if you can just let your players do some of the work, because sometimes your players' fears can create some of the best encounters. If someone with an off chance says, I think Clark said at some point that all the Brotherhood of Steel is good for is like shooting mole rats and something, and that's what inspired me to have like, we're gonna go hunt mole rats, like just turning that reality, turning that one-off comment into a reality and stuff. Like it adds to um, that. But
Well, it's like you don't plan for Pep, like Pep when Pep got power armor. It's like, okay, I had a general setting of like there was a story dump for Lonnie from the Paladin in charge that was like, hey, I need to talk to you since he was part of the Brotherhood of Steel. There was an interrogation happening where I had no clue. Like the Free League Publishing, like Signal had some facts that he was willing to give based on the interrogation, but a lot of that was like improv and hey, I'm gonna try to convince this person to get out of their power armor by trying to fight them and then steal their power armor while they're trying to fight me, and then I have this like, and then intimidate them away to make them go away, so I just have this like power armor. But what are the implications of that? It's like, well, they went into the city, caused a ruckus, and now the city's looking for people that's involved with the Brotherhood of Steel, and now they think that there's, it's like, you know, what's the domino effect of these solutions? So like the next time they go into All Nolans, it's going to be a very different vibe, very different people because of the impacts that the party had on that setting. Like my original idea for what Old Nolans would be is very different from what it actually is, like based on the story that we all told.
Another part about world building, you had touched on motivations for individuals. And I've had GMs do this before. Have your players create a wish list. So if you want to know what motivates your players, have them make a wish list of like, what's your dream weapon? What's your dream armor? What what are some things that you'd like to see in the story? So get their input, because that's going to be really motivating to, it's going to motivate inspiration for you to be able to build the world as well. So for example, Hayes, Pep and the power armor. Dave knew that eventually that's one of those bucket list check marks that Pep wanted to, or the player for Pep wanted to mark off. They wanted to get power armor, and we were able to do that fairly soon into the story. But there's stuff that we can space out as well. So Lonnie, for example, is an orphan, and we don't know who Lonnie's parents are, and Lonnie isn't sure he wants to know who his parents are. Jared, on the other hand, thinks that makes some pretty interesting story, because that's going to create some varying degrees of complication depending on who they are, if there's any siblings, if there's any other extended family, if I'm the long lost son of something like that, or the bastard child that shouldn't exist, or like there's so many different implications and stuff. And that is basically a bullet I've put in Dave's gun,
Right. And there's
that he
ways
can
that like
shoot at
even
any point.
there's ways that even players like influence that. So like when we were getting the initial load of settlers into the thing, I didn't think about like what these settlers' background were. They were just like blank slates. It was like 20 people on a trolley headed out of All Nolans. And at the end of it, he was like, are all of you born on February 31st or whatever, the thing that Lonnie says for the orphans. And at that moment I was like, I didn't expect them to be orphans, but that's actually a really interesting thing for a person that is a mayor of a settlement, to have them all be kind of similar to him, being these like 16, 17, 18-year-olds.
Well, that's what I was thinking too, because they matched me. They weren't ghouls.
Yeah.
That was really the only explanation I could come up with at that point, because like as soon as you said that, it's like, damn, that sounds like Lonnie. I wonder if they're all orphans. I wonder if Signal just raided an orphanage, because those would be some of the few people that couldn't be controlled by, what was going on in Old Nolans, and that's
right.
what I came to. So if you had said no, like, I raised their hand, that would have raised a lot of questions for me. Like, where were there other humans? This is not
right. Unless something like intentionally, like my advice is always like leave things amorphous unless they have like a specific purpose. Like there are very specific NPCs that are essentially villains, and some that are just like, hey, these are characters that the group's going to interact. Like Snick is a great one. This is a character that I don't have a plan for, that the group is going to decide the story for. Like their actions are going to affect Snick however they are. Now they like Snick is gone from the story now to the joy of everyone. But at some point Snick will be back, and we'll have different thoughts based on like their interactions with him. Same for a lot of the other NPCs that we've had. Pretty much anyone outside of like main villains that I have in mind are like very much influenced by the group. And I think having that improv mindset of like, yes, and it's like, yeah, you're right about that. And it's this, like, yes, all of these people are orphans, but when you brought it back to the settlement, 3 of them were like, we want to be in a gang and wear leather jackets and say like, tunnel snakes rule, like that. It's like,
well, and we're also talking about a game system where if you said they aren't orphans, I could have spent a luck point and said, yeah, they are.
Yeah, they are. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, so you have a game that allows the players to mechanically influence your story. So don't be too married to individual minor details.
Yeah, I agree. If you want to, essentially, you could play, like you could go back and decide that you want to run a game in one of the like previous game settings. You could do a Boston, everything's set up for Boston in the book. If you wanted to do New Vegas, which is very popular, Fallout 3, all of those are pretty easy because you already have your map. Like your map is already good, and you can change it based on time period. You can be like, yeah, this is like 10 years after the setting of the game, but you still have like your setup, you have your locations. People are familiar with that. The world building, the homebrew takes a little bit more time to get everything right. And then you realize, okay, this is a unique setting. So there's got to be unique weapons. There's got to be unique armor, and there's got to be some unique factions that are changing things. And there's got to be some static ones, but those also have to be changed in some ways too. So I would say that if you're looking to just like start off and run a game, I think that the world building aspect took me a while. That's what I spent most of my time at first doing, was like, here's where everything is.
Yeah, keep it small, keep it intimate.
Yeah.
I mean,
anything else on?
We're in one city and the surrounding area. Like keep it small, and then you don't have to do as much world building.
And the only reason I did all of Southern Louisiana is because I have a buddy that's from Baton Rouge. Then I'm like, hey, how big is Baton Rouge and Lafayette? And he was like, they're fine. I mean, New Orleans is where it's at. And so like a lot of the stuff that he's told me about growing up in Southern Louisiana, I've been able to use in the game. But like I couldn't do, hey, this is all of the west coast of California. We've got San Diego, LA, and like there's too many places at that point, as opposed to having really like 3 main cities and a bunch of stuff in between. Is a little bit more manageable. Do you want to start by? I know you had an idea for making. Was it Jack McPumpkins that you wanted to?
Yeah,
make?
well, yeah. Looking at the different character types, I wanted to start with one that was like not many options.
Yeah,
and then also pick something that most people are going to resonate with. I don't think everyone's going to pick robots. I think a GM will probably be like, okay, we can't have 5 robots. Can we not have where's the token human in the party? Where's
a human that's very convinced he's a robot.
Yeah, beep boop beep. A synth, which is a robot very convinced they're a human, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was just an idea because we know stuff about Jack McPumpkins, so we can pick things to support our decisions for Jack McPumpkins.
I mean, what do we know about Jack McPumpkins?
He likes cars. He can drive, so he's kind of got a piloting skill.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's a guard, then he probably has some skill with guns and
probably
all that. So I mean, we can make some assumptions about Jack McPumpkins.
I like it.
And then as far as like a survivor, like what do you think?
We can do a Jack McPumpkins, and then let's do a vault dweller, just basic, and we can make up a vault that they come from. I can just use the perk that I gave Buck originally.
Okay. So like where was he? Vault 28?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can just do a Vault 28 dweller.
Yeah. Vault 28 dweller. Yeah.
Okay. They have fewer options than a survivor. That probably works though, because there's going to be a subset of people that want to be a vault dweller. So
I think a lot of people are going to want to be a vault dweller. I saw people talking today that they want to do a whole campaign based in a vault, and I was like, you could do that. You just have to be a big vault with a lot of different rooms.
Yeah, you could potentially do that. I could see like the politics or something. It'd probably be good for like a one shot, but good on them
for
if
like
they can make it happen.
One shot, like an actual like we're gonna sit down for 3 hours and play a game. I think a vault, like escape the vault, I think would be a good like.
Well, that's your Fallout 3 tutorial right there.
Yeah, escape the vault. You can make like 5 NPCs and just like roll.
Was it the Gary Vault? Is that the everyone was Gary?
Yeah, and then all of the so all of the things that I've added have all been like based on lore. The only thing that I haven't based on lore is, I mean, I guess cryptids exist, but the Lugaroo is the only thing that is like.
Yeah, the Lugaroo is going to probably see some action the first time we play in that again, because
but the clones are all just like successful versions of Gary. Like I read up on that lore of like how they made Gary, and so like lore wise, every person in New Orleans is like a successful Gary. Yeah, just from like the science behind it, because I didn't want it to be a synth. I just wanted to be like direct clones of people. So they're all Garys, and effectively, like I think the Martys are like technically super mutants, but they're not like big and green and strong.
Yeah.